The boxes sat in front of us, harmless in appearance. Plain cardboard, tied with nothing more than thin ribbon. They looked ordinary, like the kind you might see stacked in any attic or pushed into a closet corner. And yet, in that moment, they carried a weight that pressed against the air, suffocating. My brother Abraham stared at them with the intensity of a man who had spent his entire life unraveling lies, chasing shadows, and piecing together puzzles others were too blind to notice. His jaw tightened as his fingers hovered over the last box, his touch slower, more deliberate, as if he already sensed something different inside. Abraham wasn't just my brother. He was a detective, a man trained to see the smallest detail, the clue hidden in plain sight, the crack in the mask. He could sense deception where others only saw a smile. But even as his hand lingered above that final box, I could tell he wasn't ready for what he was about to find. "Why didn't you show me these before?" he asked, his voice strangely hollow, carrying not anger but a deeper emptiness. His tone made my stomach churn. I had no reply. The truth was shamefully simple. I hadn't wanted to know. I had wanted to believe in her. In my wife, in her laughter, her touch, her love. Those boxes were supposed to be reminders of affection, not evidence of something darker. Denial had been easier than confrontation. Abraham tore at the tape, the sharp rip echoing too loud in the quiet room. He lifted the lid. Something shifted inside, wrapped neatly in tissue paper. He pulled it out, held it in his hands, and I watched the color drain from his face. For years, I had seen him unshaken by crime scenes, corpses, confessions of killers, but in that moment, the strong detective dissolved. For the first time in my life, I saw fear etched across his features. "I'm calling the police," he said, grave, his voice low, like a shadow had fallen across him. "And you're coming with me." Now, the air thickened, pressing down against my chest. Those gifts, those tokens my wife had given me with soft words and warm smiles, suddenly twisted in meaning. What I had thought were gestures of love, my brother was telling me were something else entirely. Evidence. I remembered every gift, the elegant watch she clasped onto my wrist, whispering, "You work too hard." The silver tie pin she slipped into my hand with a kiss, murmuring, "You deserve something special." The fountain pen she left on my desk, smiling sweetly, as if it were nothing but thoughtfulness. Always with warmth, always with affection. I had believed her, because marriage was built on trust. Or maybe I had believed her because love had blinded me. The illusion shattered with the last box, a pair of cufflinks engraved with initials that weren't mine. At first, I laughed, teased her for the mistake, expecting her to blush or explain. But she only smiled wider, kissed me harder, as though the distraction itself were an answer. That smile began to haunt me. Now Abraham's grip tightened on my shoulder, pulling me away from the table, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't understand. These items, they're tied to open cases. Missing people, robberies, and worse." My chest hollowed out, my mind spinning. My wife's hands, the very hands that had held mine with tenderness, had also delivered relics of other men's lives into my possession. She hadn't simply lied to me. She had mocked me, letting me carry the weight of stolen lives without knowing. But I didn't confront her that night. Not yet. Instead, something inside me shifted. The man who had once trusted her blindly now watched her with the detachment of a stranger. I listened to her every word, studied her every move. I became a shadow in my own home, gathering pieces she didn't realize she was leaving behind. Her phone buzzed late into the night. She would slip out of bed with excuses whispered into the dark. Friends from work. Family matters. Don't wait up. Her car returned hours later, carrying the faint trace of a perfume that wasn't mine. The trunk bore fibers, stains, things that whispered of places she shouldn't have been. While she slept, I searched. Drawers revealed receipts from pawn shops in cities she had never spoken of, jewelry boxes with pieces that were not hers. Every discovery felt like a fresh betrayal, yet I grew meticulous, careful, documenting each clue like Abraham had taught me. Dates, places, names. Slowly, I built a map of her double life. And still, by day, I played the faithful husband. I smiled at her across the dinner table, thanked her for meals, kissed her forehead before she left. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, I was unraveling the truth, thread by thread. And every thread formed the same horrifying image. She wasn't simply unfaithful. She was dangerous. And I, her husband, had been her perfect alibi. The final confirmation came one evening when Abraham placed a thick file on his desk in front of me. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were police reports, crime scene photos, lists of evidence. The same watch, the same pen, the same cufflinks. Every one tied to missing men, husbands, fathers, lovers. And in each case, there she was, woven into their last known moments. The world collapsed into a narrow tunnel of paper and ink, my wife's laughter echoing in my mind, now poisoned with the faces of men who would never come home. That night, when I walked through the door, she was waiting with a glass of wine, her smile as perfect as ever. "Tough day?" she asked casually. I set the file on the table. Silent. Waiting. She opened it, her hands steady at first, but then her face drained of color. Her lips parted in shock. Where did you get this?" I didn't speak. I only stared at her, my silence louder than any accusation. She tried to laugh, but it came out brittle, broken. "You don't really think. I mean, sometimes evidence gets mixed up. It's coincidence, Abraham. Just coincidence." Her words stumbled, desperate, collapsing under their own weight. "Who were they?" I asked finally, my voice hollow, sharp as ice. She faltered, her mouth opening and closing, tears spilling too easily, too rehearsed. "It's not what you think. Please. You have to trust me." Trust. The word cut into me like glass. Slowly, I slid the small evidence bag across the table, the keychain recovered from her car trunk, tagged and cataloged by police. Her eyes widened. Her mask cracked. Fear bled through where charm once reigned. "Please," she whispered, softer this time, more real. I stepped back, steady, distant. "The police are already on their way." Her hands shook as she reached for me, but I was already gone, already outside when the sirens lit the night. The air felt cleaner, sharper. Inside, she screamed my name, swore her love, pleaded, denied. But I stayed where I was, because the truth had already buried itself deep inside me. She had built her life brick by brick out of deceit, and I had been the foundation she thought would never crack. But I did, and the whole house crumbled. When they dragged her out in handcuffs, our eyes met once. Hers were full of terror. Mine were empty. No words passed between us, no final goodbye. Because silence was the only truth left between us. That night should have been the end of me too. My marriage, my faith and love, my belief and trust, it all lay in ruins. But in the ashes, something small began to stir. Freedom. For the first time, I wasn't carrying the weight of her lies. The chain was broken. The weeks that followed were heavy. Loneliness clawed at me. Memories haunted me. I walked through a home that felt less like shelter and more like a crime scene. But slowly, I began to reclaim pieces of myself she had buried. I started running again, each step pounding away the anger. I poured myself into work, not to escape, but to rebuild. I reached out to friends I had drifted from, people who reminded me of who I had been before her shadow fell over me. Therapy followed, something I once would have scoffed at, but now clung to. And in those sessions, I learned that healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about refusing to let her betrayal define me. Abraham stayed close, not as a detective, but as a brother. He reminded me that survival wasn't enough, that rebuilding required courage. Slowly, brick by brick, I laid a new foundation, this time one of honesty, resilience, and self-worth. Years passed. The sting of her betrayal dulled but never vanished. It became a scar, a reminder. I never stopped believing in love, but I learned to recognize that love without trust was only a mask waiting to shatter. Abraham's case files eventually closed, her name sealed away in evidence and court records. I stopped being her alibi and became my own witness. Witness to the strength I hadn't known I had, to the man I rebuilt from ruin. And so, my wife's final gift wasn't destruction. It was clarity. She left me with freedom, with the chance to start again, with the knowledge that even in the darkest collapse, a man can rise, rebuild, and live. Because I did. And I am Abraham. If this story held your breath, if you felt Abraham's pain, betrayal, and his fight to rebuild, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the shadows of human nature and the strength it takes to rise again. Your support keeps these stories alive.